So, what are the five most common mistakes people make when they're preparing for their written exams for the PADI IDC or IE? Now, before I go on to what they are, I want to say that you can't really blame people for making these mistakes because, I don't know if you're in that situation yourself where you're really trying to find advice and help as to what you need to do to prepare. Because no matter who you talk to, you've got these well-meaning people, but they all say the same thing really, don't they? They say, well, you need to brush up on your theory, on your dive theory. Oh, really? You say? Well, yeah, gosh, I never thought of doing that. But what are the people that try and advise you? I mean, they're well-meaning people, their heart's in the right place. But really, they're not really giving you solid advice, are they? They're just telling you to revise your theory. They don't tell you what to learn or how to learn. And I guess that's really where the five common mistakes will start from. I'll start with the first one is the what to learn, and then I'll move on to the how to learn in a minute. So the first common mistake that people make is that they learn the wrong material. And what do I mean by that? I mean, it's dive theory, isn't it? Well, if you turn it around and ask the question, well, what should you be learning? The answer is very obvious, isn't it? The answer is you need to be learning the material which is on the current, and I stress current, PADI IDC and PADI IE. So where do you find those subjects? Well, now that's the difficult part, isn't it? Because there are subjects that were relevant, a little while ago, a short while ago, and they're not relevant now. So how on earth do you know how to catch up? And the problem with well-meaning people is that they're going to tell you to revise stuff that they revised when it was relevant for them. So where do you go for advice? Well, you might think that the best place to go is to go onto the internet, and I mean, there's loads of people out there giving free advice, giving videos on how to prepare for your theory exams. And my website, my YouTube channel, it is no different. But for example, I had somebody a little while ago who'd been really sort of struggling through one of my videos, and it was on compartments and M values and half times and this sort of stuff. And they said, I'm really dreading my PADI IDC because I don't really quite understand all this stuff. And I said, what? Why are you watching that video? And they said, well, it's on your YouTube channel. And I said, I know it's on my YouTube channel, but I mean, that's for people that find it interesting and want to learn, but it's not for people who want to do an IDC or an IE. I mean, that stuff's no longer, hasn't been in the PADI IE questions for a long time. Why are you learning that? And they said, well, I don't know. I saw it on your website. So anyway, so there's that. And there's loads of other, misleading information online as well. I mean, one website I saw, and it was still sort of talking about how to use the PADI wheel. I mean, you probably don't even know what I'm talking about. If you're less than about 150 years old, you won't even know what I'm talking about. But I'm just saying that there's loads and loads of outdated stuff there. I mean, it's the same in all walks of life, isn't it? I went round a friend's house and their young daughter is learning to drive a car. And she'd foolishly asked her grandfather to help learn how to drive a car. And he's teaching her how to do hand signals because that's what he learned as well. And so it's really important to keep up to date with what's currently on the PADI IE and the PADI IDC exams. So that's for sure. Now, the second thing is how should you learn as well? Because again, it's just so natural and normal that people just think, oh, I want to learn something, so they go online and see if they can find a subject, and it really doesn't help if you don't have the underlying knowledge to get to that subject. I mean, for example, I had somebody very recently thought that they'd start with physiology. They really wanted to start with the absorption of nitrogen in the body when you go diving. I've got a story to tell you later on, actually, that I got stuck on this subject as well when I first learned to learning it for exams. But they were getting really stuck, and they was asking me, how does nitrogen get in the body? And then I asked them simple questions. I said, well, have you looked at that subject? Have you looked in physics about the effects of pressure? Do you understand that? Said, no, I'm going to move on to physics, later. Well, you can't really understand, nitrogen absorption if you don't understand the effects of pressure, I'm trying to say, or pressure-volume relationships, And I said, have you learnt the physiology thing? Have you learnt the thing about the alveoli and the lungs and, how carbon dioxide and oxygen exchange in the bloodstream? No. They said, well, I haven't done that. I want to learn this first. Well, you sort of can't. I mean, can you imagine trying to learn algebra, for example, if you don't know the fundamental multiplication or division? You need to learn some things first. I think it was Plato who first once said that absolutely every single thing that every human learns is based on something that they already know. It's like you can't run before you can walk. It's that type of analogy as well. And it really does... It does really apply to PADI subjects. So what you really need to do is learn all of the subjects in order. And the first subjects, the building blocks of knowledge, are really simple, actually. So they're easy to understand. And then as you move up the ladder and you move to the next subject, then that subject also then becomes easier because you've already got the fundamental building block to get there. Do you see what I mean? So it's really a great idea just to follow a sequence of topics that build upon one or another. It makes life so much easier. Now, the third mistake people make is that they don't fully understand, or they don't check their understanding of the topic before they move on. And there's several reasons why this happens. I mean, one of them is it might be, it may have been put to them in a bad manner, or not their learning style. Maybe they didn't fully understand it. It's quite common to get the wrong end of the stick. I mean, you probably, as I'm saying this, you're probably automatically thinking of a subject that you've tried to learn and you've got the wrong end of the stick, and it's taken a while, to learn things. Then you have to unlearn something, which is sort of impossible, isn't it? To unlearn something. I mean, once it's there, it's there, and then move on. Oh, I wanted to tell you about the time I was trying to learn about nitrogen absorption into the bloodstream, because it ties up quite a few of the things that we've been talking about. First off, it was presented to me by an instructor that really couldn't communicate that well. I mean, it was many years ago now, and bless his heart, he tried, but he wasn't really that. He couldn't really get across subjects that well. And the other thing is, I was learning it out of sequence as well. And so he kept explaining to me that the deeper I went, the more nitrogen I would get into my body. And to be honest, the PADI Open Water Manual didn't really help that much either, because there was an image, like a cartoon drawing of a diver underneath the water, and loads of N2 signs all around, pointing arrows, suggesting that the person was absorbing nitrogen. And of course, I listened to all of this, and I'm building up this image in my mind, getting the wrong end of the stick, and of course I thought, well, I know what I should do really. I'm not going to let nitrogen creep into my body, because I'm going to get the bends and stuff. So I'm just going to wear a very, very thick suit. And I started asking questions about dry suits already, because I thought that the dry suit might stop nitrogen getting into my body, And it was only afterwards that I learned about the alveoli and the exchange of gases, and I learned more and more and more, that I realised just how foolish I was for understanding, or for misunderstanding, a subject which, was quite straightforward. But anyway, another thing is, we're swayed by our beliefs sometimes, aren't we? I mean, sometimes we've got these core beliefs that we think are absolute gospel, and then I mean, there's an example. There was a guy on IE quite a long time ago, and there was a question in PADI, and it was about the alternate air source, and the question asked. Should the alternate air source be yellow? Should it be in the triangle? Should it come over your right shoulder? And this guy said, yeah, all of the above. And he got the answer wrong. I mean, the correct answer to that question would be it must be in the triangle in front of the body. It doesn't have to come over the right shoulder, and it doesn't have to be yellow. But in his dive school, I mean, they almost made it a rule of the dive school that every single regulator they had to be yellow. It had to come over the right shoulder. I mean, they really reinforced it in their dive school. And he then believed that it was like a universal rule, and it wasn't. So a common belief can sometimes sway. So when you are learning these small chunks in order, the correct chunks in order, it's a really good idea to check your knowledge by trying to find some, questions and or mock exams or something like that along the way, just to make sure that you've understood things correctly. So that's fine. Now, the next mistake I'm going to make is not to do with dive theory. It's going to be to do with the PADI standards. And the first mistake that people make, or the fourth mistake in this sequence of mistakes, but the first one to do with standards, is not understanding what the PADI standards exam is all about. Despite its name, it's not about you knowing what PADI standards are. I mean, it isn't. What it is about is, do you know where to find the information in a PADI instructor manual? And what I would suggest you do is to try and find some exams for the standards, for PADI standards, and look up every single answer so that you can get an idea of the layout of the manual. And it makes life so much easier when you are a PADI instructor, and also for exams. So, for example, there was somebody the other week. They were there. They were following along on my advice, and they thought it was ridiculous, really, because the question was asked is, how many training dives is a student allowed to do in one day? And they know the answer is 3. So why should they bother to look it up? Well, in the early days of you trying to really get up to speed with PADI standards, I would sort of insist that you look it up to find it. Look in the manual and find where it is. And it makes life so much easier for you in the future. Now, of course, other people then turn around and go, oh, come on, Steve, why do you want to look it up in the manual, for God's sake? You don't need to understand the manual. You can just do a search. I mean, the manual's online, it's on your computer nowadays. You just, put a search in and you find it. And yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I'm not old-fashioned. I may look at but no, I agree that the search function is good. But what are you going to put into the search function? I mean, I'll give a bit of an analogy. Let's say, for example, you're in a strange town and you need to go to a big supermarket. Now, of course, if you want to go to the supermarket, it really does help if you've sort of got an idea of the layout of the town as to get there. I mean, of course, you could pick up your mobile phone, you can put in maps, and then you can do it, and then you can follow the walk, and it will tell you to turn left, turn right, and you're going to get there. And of course, you're going to get there. But believe me, with the instructor manual, it's a good idea if you've got an idea in your head of the overall layout of the manual, and it makes finding answers to exam questions so much quicker. Now, the last mistake, actually it's not the last mistake, I've got an extra sort of a special bonus mistake that people make afterwards, but I'll come to that in a minute. So the fifth mistake that people make, and it's to do with PADI standards, and that is, they're using last year's instructor manual, or the year before's even, or the year before that's even. I mean, how crazy is that? If you're going to be a modern, up-to-date PADI instructor doing today's PADI instructor exam, and you're using an old manual. I mean, come on. Let's not make that mistake, shall we? Let's start our life as an instructor on the right page, and being up to date and being really current with where we're heading. So I gave you a little sneak just now. There is a sixth mistake actually, and this is another really common one. And again, it's easily excusable because I mean I don't really know where else you can find out this sort of stuff. But let's say, for example, you're stuck on physics. How do you know you're stuck on physics? Well, you've read the Dive Master Manual, or you've read, I don't know, even the Open Water Manual, I don't know. You've read that manual, and that didn't help. So you've gone to the Diving Knowledge Workbook, and you've read that, and that didn't really work. And then you've gone to the encyclopedia maybe, and you've looked it up in the encyclopedia, and well, that's not going to work, is it? And I'll tell you why it's not going to work, because the encyclopedia explains it in exactly the same way as Diving Knowledge Workbook, which explained it in exactly the same way as it did in the PADI instructor manuals. So you think, oh, I know, I'll go online. So you go online, and then you try and find some help from somebody, and you randomly choose somebody, and you click on it, and guess what? They explain it in the same way that it's been explained from Diving Knowledge Workbook and the encyclopedia or wherever else. It's like a PADI way of explaining this stuff. And and you could get really frustrated, couldn't you? And then you could actually buy that theory program from PADI because you're really stuck. So you pay the extra money to PADI to get the PADI product that's going to explain it in the same way that you already know that doesn't really work for you. So the sixth mistake, even though there's only five, the sixth mistake is to correct your problems. People really don't need to follow the same path. That's really where it is. So clearly, I'm going to promote my PADI IDC preparation course. I mean, clearly that's what I'm doing. And what my IDC preparation course does is it cures all of those six problems. I mean, all six of them are dealt with in a really efficient way. And I'm just being a bit crazy right now. I'm offering you a really crazy price for it, because the current price of the full PADI IDC preparation course, which covers teaching in the pool as well, by the way, briefings, debriefings, a great way of teaching people. It's been praised by so many people, but anyway, the cost of it is £89 sterling, and I'm not sure what that is in US dollars or euros nowadays. I mean, your bank will, take out the equivalent of £89 sterling. But from now, I mean, what is the date today? The date is the 14th of August. Okay. Now, for the rest of August and the whole of September, I'm going to be selling that course ridiculously, pricing at £49. I mean, it includes 5 sets of mock exams. I mean, it really is a crazy, crazy price. £49. If you follow all the links on my website, all those links will say it's £89. You're going to go down all those links until you come to the checkout. And when it comes to the checkout, all you'll be paying for is £49. A ridiculous price until the end of September. But I really do want you to see how valuable that program is for you. Anyway, thanks for listening, and I look forward to seeing you on the online preparation course. Thanks now. Bye-bye.